Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Today I am going to be making our favorite meal, which is sadza and beef stew. But I'm going to take you guys through the process of how I make my beef stew and how I make my sadza, and also some greens. So if you want to see some food cooking, then stay here. It's the right place. And here we go. So guys, everyone in my family always loves the way I make my beef stew. So this is how I do it. I've just cleaned the meat a little bit because there was a bit of blood on it. And then what I'm going to do is just put it on the hob and let that water just simmer a little bit. So as you can see, I'm just stirring the meat, just making sure that tiny bit of water from when I washed the beef is simmering. Once the water has disappeared, what I'm going to do is add some spices, and these are the spices that I use. I literally use just a little bit. So as you can see, the water is nearly finished. So now that the water is finished, what I'm going to do is actually just sear the meat. So I'm going to fry it a little bit before I actually boil the meat. This is so that all the flavors literally just lock into the meat. I don't know about you guys, but some people just boil the meat straight away. But I don't do that. I literally fry it a little bit. So as you can see, I've added a bit of paprika. And then I add some liquid seasoning. It's a Maggi brand. This is a bit salty, so it gives it the salt and also the flavor. And then I add a bit of hot mandras. But as you can see, guys, I'm not actually putting too many spices. The reason why I'm not using too many spices is because I don't want the spices to overpower the actual taste of the beef. So as you can see, now I'm going to add some chili. I only add a little bit of chili. It's up to you if you want to add chili, but by the time I actually add water to this, it's not going to be spicy. Now, as you can see, the beef is nice, and so the beef is nicely fried. All the flavors are locking into each other. So now what I'm going to do is just add some garlic and ginger. So I add just a tiny bit because, like I said, you don't want all the spices to actually overpower the taste of beef. I don't know about you guys, but you know, in Zimbabwe, when they make beef stew, they don't really use too many spices and it tastes really nice. So now I just add the water. I actually leave it to simmer for about an hour. But as you can see, the meat is still looking brown. So I'll leave that for an hour. Whilst that's actually cooking for an hour, I popped out to the shop to get some veg and some fresh tomatoes and some okra. We call it derere in Zimbabwe. So now I'm just going to wash my tomatoes. If you're not using fresh tomatoes for your beef stew, then honestly, guys, you are missing out. Because I don't know, I feel like tinned tomatoes sometimes just don't. Tinned tomatoes don't really give that freshness taste that you need. So I always use fresh tomatoes, and this is something that I think that a lot of people are missing out when they use tinned tomatoes for their stew. So now I'm just going to wash the okra or derere, and then I'm just going to prep my derere. So my beef is cooking. I'm cutting my derere. I've prepped my tomatoes. I'm actually also going to add in some fresh tomatoes onto my derere. So I just wash the tomato, cut it into tiny pieces. So this time I don't actually blend the tomato. I just cut it into pieces and leave it. These vegetables I actually got from a local fruit and veg store. And now I've just washed my veg. I'm just going to cut these greens, put them in a bowl, and then I'm also going to add some water into it because sometimes I find kuti maveja anovava, so if I cut them I add a bit of water before I actually fry them. Now I'm just gonna add some onion onto my derere, and then half of the onion is going to go in the beef. So now, as you can see, there's still a bit of water in the beef. I just use a knife to dip through the meat, and it feels really nice and soft. So this way I know that it's done. So some of the water, I've tipped it onto the bowl, and now what I'm going to do is add the onion in and actually just fry the beef. But as you can see, the beef is still looking nice and brown. The difference is when you just boil it before frying it, the beef sort of have a greyish look, and it doesn't really have any flavors. But as you can see, mine looks really nice and juicy. So I just add a bit of oil and fry it until the onion is actually brown. Now I add my tomatoes in and some of that water that was in the beef. Now I just add a tiny bit of tomato paste. This is to give my food a bit more color. Hey, so now I'm just having a little dance, you know, when you're excited for sadza. Yes. Right, okay, so now I'm just gonna prep my sadza. So whilst my sadza is actually cooking, or sadza rangu ndukurisa kuti rikwate. So while sadza rangu rukukwata, ndichazotangana zvangu kubika ne derere rangu. So okay, now I'm just prepping. I've got hot water on. I'm just going to add the hot water onto my sadza, and then I'm going to leave that to kuti sadza rikwate. So as you can see, the consistency is nice. So I just close the pan and leave my sadza to boil. I've added some water and a bit of salt onto my derere. And then now I'm just mixing it through until it starts bubbling up. Once it starts bubbling up, I'm going to add a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And what this does is, I think the soda is to actually just change the consistency of the derere. It makes it a bit more slimy. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, but this is how I've always been taught on how kubika derere. So I'd like to hear from you guys if you think any differently, or if you know the reason why we add bicarbonate of soda. So now I'm just gonna check on my beef. Guys, look at that. As you can see, I just put the tomatoes in and I just let it simmer. I wasn't opening up the pan all the times, and that beef looks really, really juicy. So now I just put it on really, really low heat and just leave it on the hob. So now I move on to making the veg. As you can see, the veg was in water, so I've drained the water out, and now I've added some olive oil onto the pan, add a bit of salt, and the veg is in. So whilst the veg is actually simmering because it was in water, I'll leave that to simmer, and I'll go on to finishing up my sadza. So I'm just adding a bit more milimil or hopeful, and then now I'm just stirring the sadza, which is komona sadza. Hey, sadza ramonwero. So now I'll just leave that to simmer, and I'll go back to the veg. As you can see, the water is fully out and the veg is fried. Here is the beef, guys. The beef is ready. So pretty much everything is ready to eat. But yeah, this is how I make my beef stew. And if you guys like what you see, I honestly think you guys should try this. And by the way, guys, don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to tuck in now.